Hello and good day, everyone. Thank you for attending this session. My name is Mark Jancola, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Conversica. You might have heard of us. We've been in business for just about 10 years, but we've been pretty small. But it's a really exciting time for us because the market and the technology landscapes have just changed so much over the last 3 or 4 years. And we're entering a very exciting accelerated growth mode. And we're really excited to share with you some of what we're doing. So you might start with, well, what is it that we do at Conversica? Well, we build and sell B2B intelligent virtual assistants, or IVAs. And these are powered by conversational AI, which of course is the subject of our talk today. So first off, I'd like to start with something that you may not know. Conversational AI is extremely powerful, and it can actually drive increased profitability for the enterprise, for companies. It's not only that you can increase revenue by tapping into opportunities that you may not be able to scale to reach or that slip through the cracks, but you can also decrease your unit costs by making existing team members more productive, more focused. Now, if you have a software virtual assistant, you can assign repetitive tasks and the virtual assistant can take care of those. They never get tired. They're reliable, they're consistent, and they can make people more productive. But if you take it further, beyond just a software virtual assistant, and think in terms of an intelligent virtual assistant, they are powered with conversational AI. They can do more than just the repetitive tasks. They have, under the hood, by definition, the use of technologies that enable them to converse with humans. And that's a whole new level of capability for a virtual assistant. And therefore, we call that intelligent virtual assistant. Now, I'd like to make a distinction between general purpose and domain-specific solutions, those two types. So a general purpose conversational AI solution would be like Amazon Alexa or Apple Siri or even Google Home, GPT-3. Unflexible, clearly they're evolving very fast. They're going to be very powerful, but there's still quite a bit to do to make them achieve specific business outcomes. And that's the other category. So there's general purpose, and then there's domain specific. In domain specific solutions, they're purpose built on focusing and achieving a specific business objective or a business outcome. And they do that by applying a set of skills. For example, a marketing IVA or marketing intelligent virtual assistant might be skilled in webinars, which means that virtual assistant knows how to create demand for the webinar, sign up attendees, help with any problems during the event, and then follow up afterward. You can see how these kind of skill-based, domain-specific intelligent virtual assistants, they can have a big impact on the enterprise today because they can achieve specific business outcomes. That is their purpose. So of course, the question today is, well, how do they work? And that's what I'd like to share with you. There's many different architectures that exist, and clearly ours has evolved over the years to what it is today. But let's look under the hood into how it works. So I know there's a lot in this chart here, so let me kind of step you through it. Let's take a look at the upper left. The virtual assistants, one or more that you have working in a company. They each come with one or more of these skills that we're talking about. Each skill is a business outcome. Now, each skill is delivered by the use of one or more conversations, and each conversation has its own outcome or its own objective. So an example from when I was talking earlier on the marketing IVA, The skill might be coordinate webinar. And then the conversations are the methods by which the virtual assistant would coordinate the webinar. For example, create demand. That might be one conversation. Register would be another one. Follow-up meeting would be another one. So truly intelligent virtual assistants must be able to work across a number of communication media as well: email, SMS, chat, voice. We call this omni-channel, right? The ability to dynamically switch between media is very important, because each of us, we certainly have our own preference about how we'd like to be communicated with. And an intelligent IVA it's redundant, an intelligent virtual assistant can switch media based on our preferences, might even switch languages, which Conversica can switch between several different languages on the fly. So back to our kind of decomposition. An intelligent virtual assistant has skills, which has many conversations, and then within each conversation, you can decompose that into a series of two-way interactions, which we call a message exchange. This is a two-way dialogue. It's one just example, one atomic send a message, get a response. And so you can see in the upper right now of this chart, the IVA sends a message to me, and then I send a response. So this is the kind of the atomic unit. This is where it all gets interesting. This is where it all happens at the lowest levels. So what happens when that response comes to us? Well, a lot of natural language processing happens. And in the interest of today's talk, I'm going to kind of focus on kind of the front end, or the natural language understanding part. And so let's look at kind of the bottom half of this chart. You can see message sent, response comes in, then it enters this NLU pipeline, this kind of large blue area. And you can see it's going to be work there, and then it's going to go into an NLG pipeline to generate kind of the next step, the next exchange as part of that conversation. So the response enters the Conversica natural language pipeline, and the first thing we do is run that response into a series of kind of pre-processing ML models. We run them in parallel whenever we can, just for performance perspective. And our goal here is to clean and to extract, to tokenize and determine the heritage of a response. Now, heritage is an important word, because what we mean here is ensuring that we know the precise context of that particular response, like, which message triggered that response, which was part of which conversation, which is part of which skill, which is part of which virtual assistant for which customer. These things are all very important kind of metadata that we want to feed into the rest of the system. So we apply a combination of well-known technologies like Spacey, our own algorithms, third-party services. It's kind of a rich library or mix of ML models that we apply to this step, this pre-processing step. And then we move into the decision-making process. This is the box here you see called decisions and relevance. Here is where we run two different recurrent neural network models, each with memory. We run them in parallel, and the goal here is to determine the next action to take, and to figure out the full context of the person that we're interfacing with. And we call this the intent model. It's kind of the meaning around the whole exchange itself. Now, we run these models as containers in a Kubernetes cluster, which gives us a great scalability. And they run alongside all of the other models that I've been talking about as well. So let's take a little bit closer look into kind of the scenario that we might be facing here in our system. Let me show you to the next slide here. Okay, so Here, this is a real world example. So the intelligent virtual assistant starts in the upper left, says, "Hi, Mark. Hey, I see that you downloaded our free software trial, Zen Studio. You don't want to follow up. If you have questions, would you like me to set up a call to learn more?" So that's from Rachel. And then you can see I responded a couple days later with, "No, I'm going on vacation. I'm not back until next month. We can talk then. Also, Sally on my team wants a copy of the Zen white paper. Hey, could you send that over?" And so there's a lot going on in this response that I've generated, isn't there? And to be relevant, the intelligent virtual assistant has to handle a complex yet kind of very typical response that you might see in this type of exchange. So if kind of go back here, you can see that we're still at this decisions and relevance step in our picture. And the next action is not just do one thing, isn't it? It's multifold, right? First off, we need to make sure that we're not tripped up by the leading no in my response, right? Rachel asked, "Would you like me to set up a call?" My first word was no. And of course, there's a lot more to the story that you have to kind of tease out by analyzing the rest of the message. Furthermore, the virtual assistant is going to have to do many things, right? It needs to set a reminder that, well, we can talk then, meaning talk after I'm back from vacation. So set a reminder to contact Mark in the future. Figure out, send an email to Sally with the white paper. Do we have Sally's information so that I can fulfill this request? If so, extract it and utilize it. So all of this kind of context, this kind of thread stack, if you will, has to be fed into the NLG subsystem. And then that's where the action, where we generate the message to be sent and take all of the specific actions that we've determined make sense to do so. Now, in the generation of the response, you can imagine that it's really important for us to have relevant conversational AI. We also need to make sure we're using the taxonomy or the vernacular of our customer. So an example of that would be, some companies call their employees, some call them associates, or partners or workers. Some companies call what they offer their product, but they might call it a service or a tool. And so we have kind of domain-specific phrase catalog that's part of our NLG system that allows enterprise customers to modify and kind of influence the types of language used in the response, which is another key component of conversational AI, that you can speak in the manner that not only a human would, but also a human that works for a certain company in a certain function. So it's an important capability. Again, don't have time to go into NLG today, but I just want to show you kind of that NLU. But let's look at how this kind of wraps up. We see later the same day in the lower left that Rachel responds and has connected the two actions into one sentence, a one-sentence reply that is very much just like most of us might write in response. And so pretty powerful. Now, it doesn't stop there, because this entire exchange is recorded in the business system of record for the enterprise. So in your company, if you have a CRM system or some other way where you want to capture the dialogues with customers or prospects, you want to know and see, who said what, when, and why, and what's the state of it. And so now this is all captured there so that any other team member can go see what happened. Now, just like humans, IVAs are not perfect yet. And so it's also a fact that before we send that next message, if our AI subsystem, if our series of ML models is not sufficiently confident, then we direct that entire kind of context thread stack to a human in the loop, who performs an annotation function and an authority ruling is made, which is then controls what is responded, which helps influence the generation of the response. but also feeds into our training data, which goes right back into the action model and the intent model that you saw earlier. So there's a strong feedback loop here, which allows our technology to get better and better. So you can see from this kind of very brief tour, conversational AI, it can have a huge impact on the enterprise because you can augment your workforce. The people can focus on the strategic, the creative, the complex, and the intelligent virtual assistant gives them the bandwidth to do so by completing some of those domain-specific tasks. Now, we provide intelligent virtual assistants that have out-of-the-box skills in sales and marketing, customer success, finance, and more. But we also have industry vertical virtual assistants. So, think, for example, like in healthcare, in that kind of environment, and how you conduct a conversation about patient care and treatment, which would be very different and very, very specific. So it's be very different, of course, to do customer success for a patient than it would for a telecom company. So I think pretty much every salesperson, every customer success manager, every employee that interacts with customers can gain productivity and drive greater results. And the IVA, if it's done well, does it while representing your company, your brand, your image, and the quality of service that's commensurate with how you run your business. So I really appreciate all of you attending this session, and I'm going to take a look.